If you like the backrooms and are interested in liminal space horror and want a book that gives you a similar feeling, here are some recommendations I would highly recommend checking out. Starting off with The Hollow Places by T.K. Fisher, this is about a woman who goes to stay at her uncle's house and finds a strange portal that will transport you to different realities. So of course she makes the horrible decision of going into these portals, and she discovers a lot of things on the other side, but also sees that creatures may reside there and they may or may not feed off of her fear. This is a really interesting premise. I was gripped throughout the entire thing. I had no idea where the story was going, which I really enjoyed. Definitely gave me that unsettling feeling, and I really love T.K. Fisher's books, and this one was no exception. One of my favorite books is The Hike by Drew Magary, and this is about a man who goes on a hike, but the hike turns out to be a lot more and a lot longer than he bargained for. I don't want to say too much because I think it's best to go without knowing anything, and while this doesn't take place in an office building, it does feature a very bizarre yet oddly familiar wilderness and being on a trail that essentially is never ending. So it gave me that similar uncanny feeling that I felt while watching The Backrooms, so that's why I want to recommend it. And if you like weird fantasy fiction, I would highly recommend checking out this book. A novella that I'd recommend is A Short Stay in Hell by Stephen L. Peck. It's about a man who gets sent down to hell, but he's very religious, so he thinks he's all good to go up there, but plot twist, he is not, and he must go down to this labyrinth of a library to find his entire life story written out in a book. The only thing is that it's basically a never-ending library with an infinite number of books, and it's hard to even find one book that isn't filled with gibberish or just blank pages, so he has to go on a quest to try finding his life story written in a book so he can escape and go back to his loved ones. And this honestly caused me to have an existential crisis. I had to sit down and stare at a wall for a few minutes after finishing this. But it is a wild ride, and I would recommend reading this book if you do like liminal space horror. Another one of my favorite books is There's No Antimemetics Division by Quantum, and I am cheating a little bit. This technically isn't a liminal space horror. I'd say it qualifies more in the sci-fi cosmic horror genres, but it did give me a very similar feeling of dread and paranoia that The Backrooms did. It's kind of like you're waiting for something to happen, and you know it's going to happen, but you don't know when it is, so you're just anxiously awaiting it. And that's how this book felt, honestly. I don't want to say too much because I think it's best to go without knowing anything, and it is just so fantastic. It feels like a fever dream. You have no idea what's going on, and I loved every single second of it. And the final recommendation I have is for Finna by Nina Cipri, and this is based in an IKEA-like store, and an elderly customer accidentally goes through a portal to another dimension, so 2 minimum wage workers must go through these portals in order to bring her back to her granddaughter. The only thing is that these 2 workers just broke up a week ago, so things are very messy between them, and they're kind of fighting as they're going through these portals to new spaces. Why this did remind me of The Backrooms is because some of these spaces that they went to felt very familiar, like they kind of were part of the store, but something didn't feel exactly right. Felt very eerie, and they also felt like they were lost at times, and trying to go back to what you think is normal, but realizing that the place you're going to isn't exactly where you originated from. It's a really interesting story. It features a queer relationship, and it is a bit different from the other recommendations on this list, but I had a great time reading it and would highly recommend it.